Buckeye fans, and welcome to another episode of the Bucknuts Happy Hour. I am Patrick Murphy here with you from Bucknuts and 24/7 Sports. We have got a show for you today where we are going to do some reflection on the Penn State game, look ahead a little bit to the Purdue game, talk about the Buckeyes in general, and we're going to do some even more reflection on the Buckeyes and whatnot with a special guest, which we will get to in a moment. Before we get into that, though, if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you hit that thumbs up button, hit the bell for notifications so you get not only all of our podcasts at Bucknuts, but all the videos we put out of interviews and everything else. If you are listening to this on your podcast platform of choice, please leave a 5-star review, comments. That stuff is all very helpful to us. And let's get into the show today. As I mentioned, we have a special guest, I think a first-time guest who knows the Buckeyes as well as anyone. So we're going to talk a little bit about the past, this year's team, and kind of going forward with this season with Tim May. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing extremely well, Mr. Murphy. Extremely well. Pat, who covers the crew, is known in my contacts list on my cell phone.
Yeah, that is how we first really met. I say guest name followed by their outlet, but you are in a unique place where you're doing this kind of for yourself at this point.
I'm with FanStream. Yeah, I'm with FanStreamSports.com. I mean, they're the ones distributing my podcast that I do.
That's true.
3 times a week with Clay Hall. So, featuring Clay Hall, as I like to say.
Featuring Clay Hall. How many years is this on the beat for you?
Since 1984. Okay. I mean, I go back. I mean, obviously 42 seasons, and as I just texted the guy over at Purdue, the first loss I covered was Ohio State at Purdue when they had Jim Everett. Purdue did, and Ohio State had a freshman receiver named Chris Carter and a freshman linebacker named Chris Spielman and a senior quarterback named Mike Tomczak. And Ohio State was behind late in the game, and Ohio State was driving, and Mike Tomczak threw the ball out of bounds to stop the clock on 4th down. So, that was the first loss I ever covered at Ohio State, which is kind of ironic. They're playing this week. But, yeah, I've been doing it for 42 seasons.
All right. That's enough that we can do a little reflection here. One of the things that I have been most impressed about with this team is coming off of a national championship. I think it would have been really easy to just not put everything you've got into this season. I really think what Ryan Day's done and how he's approached this with this day-to-day, week-by-week mentality has been very successful, but impressive to me. You've covered teams coming off championships before. What has stood out to you about this group in terms of the way they've gone about getting to 8-0?
Dude, I will come clean with you. I was going to retire fully after last season because, I
know.
What better way to go out? I know you knew, but maybe others didn't. I don't really care if they did or not, actually. I'm just trying to stay humble. But I was very curious to see how Ryan Day and revamped staff, were going to handle the year after. And I've been so impressed. It's ridiculous. But that's the reason I've stuck around, because I wanted to see this. And because you and I both know, Pat, and you probably know better than I do because you cover recruiting a lot more in depth than I do, but I keep up with it, is the stockpile of talent they've got at Ohio State right now. And it's really ironic is just when you think there's going to be a national championship year, there isn't. At least it's been my experience covering Ohio State. And just when you think there isn't, there is. And so last year, you thought there was going to be, and then he lost 2 games in the regular season. And what was their salvation? The expansion of the playoffs to 12 teams. They're the number 6 seed, number 8 team, really, when it came to the final seedings. But the bottom line is they got in. We all knew that was a superior talent team that got its act together. This year, we all knew going in, this was going to be a superior talent again, but unproven in a lot of places. And we all know what happened with the defensive coordinator position after the year was over. We all know what happened to the offensive coordinator position was over. how's Ryan Day going to deal with this? A team that still a lot of people maybe aren't giving enough credence to, but I think they all caught on before the preseason polls, right? Except for those people voting for Penn State and Texas. But the bottom line is, how are they going to deal with this? A new offensive coordinator now, finally, for sure, in Brian Hartline, and Matt Patricia. Not a recycled job, but wow. I mean, I texted Ryan as soon as I knew that Patricia was coming on. I said, "This is not a good hire. This is a great hire." Meanwhile, everybody was taking their shots at him about what happened in Detroit when he was the head coach. That would be like an Alabama, somebody covering Alabama, taking shots at Alabama when they hired Nick Saban from the Miami Dolphins. I mean, he hadn't been a failure, but pretty mediocre, in his foray into the being on top of things, being the head dog for an NFL team. My bottom line is you can see the talent, though, and you can see the talent in Matt Patricia. So, it's been very much refreshing to watch this team develop. I don't know if you agree or not, but and Buddy, it's not even as good as it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like I said, I think the way the coaches have handled it, but the players too. I mean, I thought it was really interesting when we heard from Ryan Day that players asked to take down the national championship stuff in the facility. You don't hear that very often, right? Nope. Like players want to celebrate that. And these were the leaders, the returning guys. I think the mentality is just pretty unique. I had one of our Georgia writers on before the season because he covered the back-to-back national championships that they won. And he was talking about some of the stuff that you needed and the leadership and having enough guys that are still hungry, but guys that know how to get through it. And obviously it's different now with the 12-team playoff, but I think you've seen a perfect blend of that. Do you agree?
Agree 155%. I didn't give you 156 because, still have a little trouble in a couple of seconds. No, I'm messing with you. But yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is one of the more talented teams, with the exception of losing one guy, was 2003 for Ohio State. After that 2002 national championship, but of course Maurice Clarett, was persona non grata because of an investigation going on, et cetera. So he didn't get to come back, and they never did find a real running back that year in 2003. And BCS then 2 teams got to go. 2015, that was as talented a team as it was in 2014, maybe more so. I don't know if you agree, but you had your starting quarterback back, or you had a quarterback battle, as it turned out, because you had both your starting quarterbacks back.
Right, right.
Say that 3 times, it makes your head spin. But then there was just some little thing missing there, when they really needed it in one game, which was the Storm game against Michigan State, when Michigan State beat Ohio State with his 3rd-string quarterback. Go figure. But 12-team playoff, that team might have been the 5th seed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the salvation now, is that now you got 12 teams. I was doing we did a preseason wall-to-wall sports on Channel 10, and I forgot who. Usually it's Dom posing the question to the group, but it was asked, is it easier now to win a national championship than it was? And a couple of people in there said no. I said, no, it is. And they looked at me funny. I go, no, because you can make the field. You had no chance unless you were a top 4 team up to 2000, up until last year, to make the field. In 2002, you only had a chance if you were one of the top 2 teams by this weird formula, but it was still a formula. And but you only had that was your only shot. And now, Big Ten. Then you got 3.
Did you lose me there for a second?
I lost you there for a second, but you came back, and then you were. Right. I don't know if I made my point. My final point was you can't win it if you ain't in it, and it's a lot easier to be in it than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You took us down a little bit of memory lane there with some of those teams. Do you have a team that you covered here that stands out to you for one reason or another, whether enjoyable, talent-wise, things like that just pops to your mind when you think about all the years you've covered this group?
Yeah, I mean, 2002, Ohio State was decent in 2001, the first year of the Jim Tressel era, but he didn't except for beating Michigan. That's about all that team did. You know what I mean? Of remarkable. Yeah. That was big back then, believe me. 2-10-1 was the previous regime,
right?
But then, but the way it came together, and the way the defense just really came together. That's why I picked them to beat Miami in the national championship game. Everybody was talking about this, that, and the other, and Maurice Clarett and Craig Krenzel, Michael Jenkins, right on down the line. But I really like the way the defense came together. I met Wilhelms on my podcast once a week during the seasons. Of course, he was a big-time player on that team, linebacker. But I marveled at how the defense came together under Mark D'Antonio, and they got their business taken care of and had enough offense to win games. You remember those teams? Oh, yeah. You were about 4 years old then? But
I was a little older than that. But.
Okay, 5.5, big whoopee. Now you're bragging, but it's really been the championship teams, because even last year, this. I mean, 14. You couldn't. How crazy was that? You lose your starting quarterback. And then after you get there, you get to the promised land. J.T. Barrett was sort of Moses. He led them to where they could see the promised land, but he wasn't allowed to lead them into it. Ends up being Cardale Jones. And how can you write anything more crazy than that season, the way it developed, about the way it got into the playoffs? I mean, 59-0 over Wisconsin. Nuts. And that was the benefit of it being a 14 playoff, because they wouldn't have gotten in the BCS formula.
Right.
And then, of course, last year was such an enjoyable time. They had the 1 point loss at Oregon, and then, are you kidding me, a fourth straight loss to Michigan. But last year, this, almost everybody you talked to on that team was just a great guy to talk to. Just upper level, kind of like intelligence. And that's the way it's carried over now into this season. That's why I like this team, man. There are some really smart people on this team who happen to be football players. And It was that way last year. But just the stories last year when Jack Sawyer was robbed of his great moment because Ohio State didn't beat Michigan. Then he gets another one, Right. And Will Howard, Will Howard wasn't a wandering wayfarer, but when he showed up at Ohio State, but just the way he improved as a passing quarterback as the year went on, much less he was already a bona fide leader, all of our interaction with him and stuff, but just to watch him improve, and at the end of the year be the best quarterback in the country, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the country, is crazy. And of course, always at Ohio State, there's new talent bubbling to the top. Jeremiah Smith, and then a few guys that get in the portal, and then these other guys who wait their turn and become big time players like Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams, with the travails he went through to finally become, in my opinion, as good a defensive tackle as there was in the country list. That's what makes it cool. And you see the same thing happening on this year's team. Caden McDonald, are you kidding me? I mean, wow. And Caden Curry. Tywan Malone finally hitting home runs as a football player. I mean, that's just an example of the interior defensive line that we're seeing right before our eyes. Will Smith, he's so good now, other teams are holding him, but now, of course, not getting called.
Right. Yeah, that was a full tackle on Saturday.
I don't know what that's called. That's called illegal tackle.
Yeah, it was a center making a tackle.
Yeah, a good one too. They could have used him on defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Day, you touched on him a little bit. How different do you feel like he is with sort of the monkey off the back? I know he still has the Michigan stuff, but getting that national title last year, sort of validating the way he is as a coach and his approach. Do you get that sense as we've talked with him throughout, the offseason and even during the season? Yeah,
you're that question I asked him in preseason.
Yeah.
After they had the as the preseason camp started and the players are all gathered around him and the coaches and everybody. And I asked him, do you feel like do you feel the attention on you as being different? The focus meaning, okay, last year this time we were listening to a guy that's coached some damn good teams and been a quarterback whisperer and all the other things, but he hadn't won a national championship. Now we're standing here. I'm talking about the players and the coaches. Standing here, we're listening to a guy who's the head coach of the team that just won the national championship. That immediately gives you credentials, credibility, whatever cred you want to put in front of it. It gives you cred, gives you street cred. And but the thing that stood out to me about him thus far this year, and you know this, Pat, you cover the team. Dude, I think he's more intense this year than he was last year. I mean, in a lot of respects, because some guys get that, and like you said, a little kickback, a little couple of golf vacations. No offense, you Freeze. A couple of golf vacations or whatever, too many speaking engagements. Right on down the line, in my opinion, physically, he trimmed up. He's a trimmer version of himself from a year ago. There's one example. Number two, you can tell how driven he is every time he talks to us. But just watch the little times we've gotten to watch practice or pre-practice or post-practice. He's in on everybody's business,
Yeah. He to me it's pretty apparent.
By the way, my screen just froze, but I hope my pearls of wisdom came through.
I got it. Yeah, no, you got it. To me, it's been interesting that he not only has done all those things, but he stayed Ryan Day. Like a month or so ago, I was at a elementary school where he was speaking about mental health to kids. It was a Friday morning. Him and Nina were there, and we know how important mental health is to him. But one of the things I asked him afterwards was like, why this on a Friday? Why not wait till, after the season or whatnot? And he just thinks it's that important to still be out, doing the things he was doing before. I remember a few years ago when we're sitting in the Woody after a Wednesday practice interviews, he walks through and he's hanging up the phone and he starts talking to us. And somebody asked him just like, how different are things? This is obviously pre-national championship. And he goes, man, I didn't expect to not be able to go to the grocery store anymore. Like, he wants to just be a guy, but he happens to be the best football coach in the country, arguably. So I just think what he's been able to do and how he's handled it has been impressive. But then I mentioned this, the Michigan thing. Do you think that this sort of getting to this point will allow him to kind of get over whatever has caused him to lose these last 4 games against the rival?
Play like that's a booger, but it's on my shoulder. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
It's like one of those things, man. It's there. I don't care if this sounds like blasphemy. I have the right to make my own opinion about things, having covered the team for 42 seasons. The Michigan game matters, definitely, especially when you've lost 4 straight to anybody. That freaking matters. When they got upset by Purdue in 2018, one of the craziest games we've ever covered. You were around them, right? Yeah. It mattered the next time you played Purdue. Are you kidding me? So definitely this matters. But you know what, Pat? It doesn't matter as much as it used to, man. It doesn't matter except for pride, and that's why you play college football. That's why these schools all fund college football teams so they can say our team's better than your team. Yana, that kind of stuff, or na. It matters, but boy, in the big grand scheme of things, doesn't matter as much as it used to. I mean, dude, we're looking at an era in college football when the Big Ten has allowed now Ohio State and Penn State to not play for the next 2 years. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? How do the networks even? I got going about that last week on my podcast, but are you kidding me? How do you let 2 of the blue bloods in major college football not play for a couple of years? I'm talking about from the network standpoint. You want that on the inventory shelf when you go shopping every year for what game am I going to start at like 4:30 Icelandic time? You know what I mean? Whatever time they're looking for. How does that happen? But college football has changed dramatically. You heard me ask Ryan that this week. When he got named the head coach in 2019, obviously he'd done it for 3 games before that and proven himself capable, let's put it that way, but definitely was going to be on a learning curve once he got the full-time job. But his normal was, number one, 2019, and then getting screwed by the officials in the game against Clemson. Otherwise, we would have seen one of the great games of all time, Ohio State versus Joe Burrow, and LSU. But anyway, we got robbed of that. But my point is, he rode from that punch to the COVID punch, fought tooth and nail to get a season for Ohio State. And when the commissioner of the Big Ten and stuff didn't want to play football in the fall, we all know. I mean, it wasn't just him, but Kevin Warren. He'll go down in infamy for a lot of things. But then you move out of that, you move into the NIL, where you recover. The 2021 was recovering from COVID, and then you move into the NIL transfer portal era. This is not Nick Saban's world anymore. This is not Urban Meyer's world anymore, or Bear Bryant's or Woody Hayes. This is demands a total different discipline from head coaches. And you've seen some head coaches who have made that translation, but haven't made it very well, and now you're seeing guys get fired after 2 or 3 years because money is so critical to everything, but being able to adjust on the fly to the newest thing coming out of the off the showroom that hadn't even been driven, from a test drive standpoint, you're expected to still drive it. I mean, I think Ryan Day has really shown his strength from an intelligence standpoint, the ability to roll with the punches, whatever they may be. And then on top of that, not just adapt, as he called it, adaption yesterday or day before yesterday, but adapt and destroy.
Right.
I'm very impressed. But I want to go back to one quick thing. I know your time's limited. You talked about that elementary school you went to a couple of weeks ago when he was speaking in the middle of the season. And when he and Nina funded that program at Ohio State, whatever it's called, Western Medical Center, whatever it's called. Yeah. I remember walking up to him after that ceremony, and I said, I shook his hand. I said, I just want to let you know I'm proud to know you. And he looked at me kind of funny, like, what is it? And I said, no, man, not everybody does something like this, and with their heart and soul in it. And that's what he did. I'm proud to know him as a person, is the way I'm saying it. Do we still have to be critical of that, like that offensive game plan against Michigan last year? Or what was that? You know what I mean? Except for the 2-minute drive before halftime. What are you doing now in the second half? I mean, but as far as being a human being, a person, wow, you can't get much better than him and Nina.
Yeah. And look, Buckeye fans want him to win games, right? But I think there is something to having a guy that you can look at and say, hey, not only is he our coach on the field, but he's the right guy off the field. And I think that reflects in the players, like you were saying earlier, right? Yep. These guys are all good guys, smart guys. If you want, you can have conversations with them about things that have nothing to do with football, and they're just as interesting. And I don't think you find that everywhere.
Yeah, no, you don't find it everywhere. And the other thing about it is, so far in the transfer portal era, Ohio State's rarely lost anybody who was going to play or play much. You understand what I'm saying? And a lot we're seeing it. Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, part and parcel to what they're doing defensively this year. Could have left last year when they found out Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau were returning. What? Wait a minute, it's my turn. I think the brotherhood's a real deal, man. I mean, I really do. I'm convinced of it, and the way they foster it is the main reason it's a real deal. And so there's like the depth, that everybody's trying to now replicate Ohio State around the country. Yeah. When you hear the rumors about maybe Brian Hartline being in the running for this job or that job, especially one job, which is kind of curious. I don't see it happening, but some people do because it's easy to write. But my point is, everybody wants a piece of Ohio State now, meaning if we cut off this branch, this little twig, and we stick it, graft it into our tree, maybe it will grow like Ohio State's tree did. But, you look at Ohio State, man, it's Ryan Day, but it's also Mark Pantoni, and it's also Mick Marotti.
Yeah.
That is the continuing I'm trying to think the greatest analogy. I'll think of it about 10 minutes from now when we're done. But that's the continuing core. There you go. To what Ohio State has been doing since Urban Meyer showed up. And almost everything else has changed. Even Larry Johnson was hired in 2014, but almost every other person has changed in that coaching room. But and I think Larry Johnson's part and parcel to it, man. When you're a GOAT of something, you must be pretty good. But just everybody wants a little bit of Ohio State, but really Ohio State is so much deeper than you think it is.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think you sort of made reference to Penn State there and Brian Hartline. I think they hope to get some of that with Jim Knowles. It doesn't seem like that has worked, but
I'll just throw this out there though. But because I think Brian Hartline has an incredible future. I think great, incredible future. But golly, man, what would you look like if you hired their defensive coordinator this year, and then the next year you hired their offensive coordinator also as your head coach, which I think Brian Hartline is going to be a hell of a head coach, maybe sooner rather than later. But I'm not sure that passes the eyeball test over there. But if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get you out of here on this, Tim. 4 games left in the regular season, starting with that Purdue game, obviously the Michigan game. You hope a Big Ten championship and then the playoff. Just generally, how do you see the rest of this season playing out based on what you've seen so far?
Ohio State's going to be favored all the way through, including. I called for Ohio State to have an undefeated regular season, and everybody kept saying 11-1. I said, "What's the one?" I kept saying, "What's the one?" You can't unless you can identify the one. How do you say 11-1? Is my point, because I knew they'd be favored over everybody they play. Will they get to 13-0? That's the big question, because the Big Ten is really going to luck out. It looks like this weekend will tell the tale. We'll see if there's any juice left at all in Penn State, if they can pull off some kind of upset of Indiana, right? But this is the telltale, because Ohio State should take care of business. Against UCLA and Rutgers, and then we'll be favored, I don't know how heavily, against Michigan. I guess what I'm saying is I see Ohio State going to Indianapolis and playing for the Big Ten championship for the first time since 2020. Boy, it's been a long time, man. The St. Elmo Steakhouse, I think they had a reservation ticket with your name on it, just perpetually stamped over there, didn't they? But
for a while.
Yeah, it is crazy. But the bottom line is, then when you get to the playoffs, man, I'm not sure getting a bye in that first round is a good thing. But if you don't get the bye and you're in the Big Ten championship game, that means you play 5 extra games, not 4. Nobody wants to play 5 extra games. I don't care what kind of roster you got. So if Ohio State holds sway, then I'm not sure what I'm picking up vibe-wise. We're the number 1 seed, because I would expect Ohio State to continue to be the number 1 seed then in the college football playoffs. If they take care of Indiana could be the number 3 or 4, right? Even if that happens. But I'm not sure their next game would be the Rose Bowl or not. I'm not sure what the plans are in that regard, meaning, for the CFP, because obviously they played Oregon in that, but you're not luck of the draw. You got to play somebody eventually, one way or the other. But boy, if they got a bye after being the national champion a year ago, sets them up extremely well. I don't know if you agree or not. And so this team has all the capability of making a run again, because their quarterback is really good and is going to get better. And their running backs are finally coming online in a consistent basis. This little trouble about the offensive line going into this week with all 3 of the top guards banged up in one form or fashion. Maybe we'll get to see Gabe Van Sickle. But the bottom line is, they rolled with the punches last year. There's no reason they can't roll with them this year. And we'll get you out here on this, Pat. The thing that gets me about the SEC and all those guys down there all worried about getting a 3-loss team in, it nauseates you, right? I don't know if it nauseates you. It nauseates me. And I grew up an Alabama fan. But But the bottom line is I think Ohio State will be in good stead to have a shot because there are only about 3 really good defenses in the country this year, and one in the SEC, which I would call Texas, and 2 in the Big Ten, which are Ohio State and Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Ohio State is equipped with the defense to help you win. But I like to say the defense puts you in position to win. The offense finally has to win the game for you. So I like the offense in its trajectory.
You brought up Indiana there, so I want to get your opinion real quick on that. Just this is a program that I think 1967 was the last time they won a Big Ten title.
Yep.
It's a basketball school that has become a football school. What do you make of a program like Indiana, not only doing it last year, but then following up with what they've done, at least thus far this year? As you mentioned, they have a big game at Penn State this weekend.
How many head coaches in Major College Football have been fired already? 17, 18? It may be bigger than that.
Yeah.
Dude, if Curt Cignetti and Indiana can do it, now I'm an athletic director or a president at one of those schools, and I'm looking at the athletic director and the head coach going, why can't we do it?
Yeah.
What the hell? If Vanderbilt can do it, why can't we do it? That's the conversations going on right now. It is remarkable, is the tamest way of putting what Curt Cignetti has done, and it reinforces what I've always said about places. Hire a head coach who's got a plan, who has run a program, even at FCS level. Jim Tressel was at FCS level, aka 1AA, when Ohio State hired him. But you could tell he had been quite successful, but 4 national championships or whatever, played for 2 more. I mean, he had a program. Hire somebody who has run a program and can bring in the right people. You may have to have a couple of years of patience. I think Indiana's remarkable because he brought an almost intact core of players with him from James Madison, who helped coach the other players. And then they brought in, the transfer portal. They hit it like nobody's business. They got the right guys for themselves. And then this year, and I like to say this guy's name, I'm bringing it up, Fernando Mendoza, the transfer from Cal. He's an upgrade at quarterback. And they only lost last year to the 2 teams that played for the national championship. Are you kidding me? And he's undefeated now and running roughshod over everybody. So, yes, I was saying this in preseason and back during the spring. I mean, I really thought Indiana had a great chance to repeat what it did, except its schedule was tougher this year. Well, what have they done? They won at Oregon. They're playing at Penn State. Where else did they win at? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, they played Kennesaw Mountain Landis State and a couple other no-name schools, Indiana State or whatever, Eastern
Illinois at home.
Yeah, they beat Illinois at home.
Yeah.
They beat somebody else on the road. Who else did they beat on the road? Anyway, but the bottom line is, they're for real. They are absolutely for real. That's
all
not
right,
what
Tim.
but that's what I ended.
No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
Remember the old brother, where art thou? He's bona fide.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. To put it. Well, Tim, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you jumping on. This was fun to reflect and look forward on what this Buckeye team has done and what it will be. So appreciate you joining.
Amen. By the way, we're watching a very special talent in Jillian Sayin, the best throwing quarterback I've ever covered at Ohio State. And that takes into all. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy is different. And I know about the other guys we could bring up. Dwayne Haskins Jr., bless his soul. But right on down to C.J. Stroud. But this guy, my friend, is different.
Yep, I agree. Again, thank you, Tim. And I'll see you Saturday.
You got it, brother.
All right. Thanks again to Tim May from the Tim May Show, formerly of the Columbus Dispatch, Letterman Row, I believe. He's been a few different places, but thank you to Tim for coming on and joining us to talk again, Buckeye past, present, future. I think he gives a unique perspective on the Buckeyes because of how long he has covered this team, what he's seen, all that. Not that everyone else, my guys, me, People at other outlets don't do a great job, but Tim just has a unique perspective and a unique personality, which I find rather entertaining, and I hope you did too. Because Tim talks a lot, that went longer than, well, not longer than I expected because I know how Tim is, but I'm going to hit on a few things here quickly. But the main point was to have Tim on this week's Bucknuts Happy Hour. The first thing I would talk about, and I talked about it a little bit earlier this week on the Bucknuts Morning 5 with Dave Biddle. If you missed that, you can check it out. I believe, it was the Wednesday episode the day after the college football playoff rankings came out. So I see this every year after the college football playoff rankings come out. And it's, these rankings don't matter. And it doesn't matter until the end. And when you're Ryan Day or you're a coach or a player on this team, you could say that because to them, it shouldn't matter. They should not care whether they are 1, 12, 18, whatever they are. They know what they need to do. And that's a perspective you can have as a fan, as a media member as well. But I push back from our perspective of covering the team and from a fan perspective of wanting information about the team, because I think the first college football rankings first college football playoff rankings, are actually the most interesting outside of the ones that tell you the field. Because I think it gives you, and I talked about this, I think last year at this time, it gives you an idea of what this playoff committee is looking for, right? The AP poll, the coaches poll, you can pretty much predict that more or less every week because you are familiar with that. Well, the college football playoff committee, it changes every year, right? And there are new people. This year's very different than a year ago with the group that is making this. There's new criteria that they've put in. There's new metrics that these committee members are looking at. So I think the first rankings give us an idea of how the rest of the rankings are going to look. And look, next week and the week after, and these few rankings until the final ones that set up the playoff, those ones don't matter as much, especially if you are in Ohio State and you keep winning and you know what you're going to be. But even for a team like, say, I don't know, Iowa or Missouri, just two teams that are lower down the top of my head, like if you're winning, you're going to probably move up and things will take care of themselves. And there's only so much you can do about it. So for them, it doesn't matter. But what stood out to me from the committee's call and looking at the rankings and all that was they are watching these games. And not to say that past committees did not, because they certainly did, but they're watching them with like what I consider a trained eye on these games. And going into Tuesday night, I thought there's a good chance Ohio State is number 2 to Indiana. And then I was listening to the show that was on ESPN right before the actual college football playoff rankings release show came on. And Joey Galloway made the point, if you look at the metrics, Texas A&M actually has a pretty good case to be 1 or 2 ahead of Ohio State. And, Joey Galloway, I think, does a decent job. He's a Buckeye, still around the program from time to time. I don't think he's saying this because he's anti-Ohio State. I think he's saying this because looking at the numbers, the data, those things, the metrics kind of show that Texas A&M is there. At least you can spin it that way. And it wouldn't have surprised me if the committee did. Probably also because it doesn't ultimately matter. Ohio State's going to have a chance to get back to 1 or get to 2 or whatever. At least have that bye if they win out. But the committee ranking the Buckeyes number 1 shows me that they are not only watching the games, but they are understanding the games. It would have been easy to talk about Indiana and how they've blown out teams X, Y, and Z throughout the season. I think their victory margin for if you combine the whole season, I think is about per game is about 3 or 4 points better than Ohio State's. And I think you could have, if you just kind of watched the games and whatnot, said, yeah, Indiana right now, they actually look better than Ohio State. They have a road win at Oregon. That's their best win. Ohio State's best win is at home against Texas. They have Oregon higher than Texas. You could have made it that way, but watching and understanding the games, the committee members are saying, in addition to, and I wrote about this if you want to read it, the defense and things like that they actually brought up, they're sending a message of, look, we see what Ohio State and Ryan Day are doing. Now, are the Buckeyes getting the benefit of the doubt for being the defending national champions? That's not supposed to happen. But I do think it is a little bit, because I think they saw last year, okay, Ryan Day slowed this team down, right? They're not playing tempo as much. They're playing more methodically. He slowed this team down. They're not scoring a ton. But when they get to the playoff, they can crank it up. And Ryan Day said that when we need to, we can crank it up. They know what they need to do to win. And I think if you're watching these games, you're seeing that Ohio State has been in complete control all season. Think back. Was it week 1 the last time you felt pretty uncomfortable about a game? Probably. And maybe not even in that one, because Ohio State, I mean, they led almost that whole game. So they have this control that they want over these games, and they're playing them. It's like a basketball team, that slows you down and plays at your pace, or speeds you up and plays at their pace. Like, they are dictating how they want these games played, and no opponent has been able to do anything about it. And for me, that shows me that they're the best team in the country, on top of all those other, when you add in all those other things they can do, the defense being as dominant as it is, Julian Sayin and these receivers, the offensive line playing well, last 2 games maybe aside, as they've been a little banged up. But I still think they're playing really well. The running game coming, all this stuff. But in addition to that, they have this control. Could they be scoring like Indiana if they wanted to? Yeah. They could easily, go fast and try and put up as many points as they can and run it up on opponents and do all that. But they recognize that Ryan Day doesn't need to do that, and they are controlling these games. And I think that that's key going forward. Assuming Ohio State wins, they win these next 4 games, including beating Michigan, go to the Big Ten title game and beat presumably Indiana. There's nothing to really have a conversation about. But if they do lose a game, I think the committee is still going to recognize, even if it is a loss you don't see coming, which, again, I don't see one coming. But if it does, I think the committee is going to recognize how good this team still is, and maybe not punish them as much as they might other teams who, like a Texas, for instance. Say Texas only had 1 loss, but it had looked kind of as shaky as it has at times. Like, I don't think this committee would give them as much credit, because when they're watching the games, their understanding of it is Texas is getting by, which is important, but they're not as dominant. They're not this team that we think could go on and win a national championship if they keep playing this way. Whereas you look at Ohio State and it's like, well, they might lose a game. You lose games. You saw it last year. But they look like a team who can win a national championship. Talent, coaching, and the way that they're just controlling everything in a game. And so I think that's really important coming out of the college football playoff rankings. In terms of where teams are and things like that, that will change, and that will get, better or worse depending on how things go. But I think that recognizing what the committee is looking for in teams is something to, keep in the back of your mind as we go through these next few weeks. As for things I'm looking for throughout the course of these 4 games, really these 3 games heading into Michigan, the most obvious, and I'm not going to go into super detail about it because we've talked about it all season, is the run game. Obviously you want to get that going. I've said it multiple times. While I think Ohio State could win a national championship without being elite at running the ball, to me, there's just going to be a time when you're going to need that run game, whether it's bad weather, whether it's, you're in Ann Arbor and you're trying to run out the clock at the end of the game, whatever it may be. I think you're going to need that. So can they get the run game going? They had over 100 yards from Bo Jackson last week. Yes, most of that came on a 51-yard run. Still counts. So I would like to see that over these next few games, especially if the Buckeyes can get up, on Purdue, on UCLA, on Rutgers, and then let's see you run the ball. Let's see, wear teams down by leaning into the run a bit more. This passing game, Tim May ended his time on here talking about Julian Sayin being the best quarterback Ohio State's had. The way he throws the ball, if you're on Instagram, I don't know if it went out on other social media, but I saw it today. Jake Butt, who will be calling a game this weekend, was breaking down Julian Sayin and his footwork and the way he flips his hips, and just like all of these things that the naked eye probably doesn't see unless you're really watching for it when you're watching Julian Sayin. It's veteran. And this is a guy who's started 8 games. He is doing things that I think a lot of quarterbacks in their first year aren't doing. A lot of guys are getting by with, arm strength or accuracy, but he is doing all of these little things already that make a quarterback great. And the addition of using his legs a little bit more, like he is becoming a complete quarterback that, obviously has entered the Heisman conversation, is potentially the front runner to win the Heisman now. And I think the way he has just continued to get better and do the little things right has been really impressive. And I want to see more and more of this as the season goes on, because speaking of the H word and Heisman, I think if Ohio State is undefeated, goes into Ann Arbor, and Julian Sayin is one of the key reasons that the Buckeyes win that game for the first time since 2019, I think that's your Heisman moment. Like, are you going to have a Julian Sayin run where he, breaks off one, or, a throw? It doesn't even have to be like a drive at the end of the Michigan game. I think that whole game can be Julian Sayin's Heisman moment, because what's on the line, what was likely to be on the line, what's on the line just from that pride standpoint Tim was talking about. And then if he is part of the reason to do it, to me, that pretty much locks up. Assuming each week in between then these next 3 games, he plays the same level that he has the rest of the season, which I don't know why he wouldn't. On the defensive side of the ball, this defensive line, I just want to continue to see more progress. Kenyatta Jackson last week having his best statistical game in a year where I think he's been really good, but at times, just overlooked a little bit because he hasn't been asked to come after the quarterback as much. Like, if he gets going on that side of things, you have Caden Curry, you have Caden McDonald in the middle. So you got some depth built there. You hope Edric Houston can start to come on a little bit more. I thought he played well against Penn State. Tim mentioned Tywone Malone, excuse me. Like, all of a sudden, that's a pretty dangerous defensive line. And, think back to last year. It came after that Oregon game, and Ohio State had to adjust some things and how they were doing it. They haven't had to do that this year, but the defensive line really started to come along here in this last month of the season and going into the playoff. And I'd love to see that continue. Not that they've been bad or anything. There hasn't been much talk about a lack of a pass rush or giving up runs. They've been really good. But can you become elite by adding, Kenyatta Jackson getting to the quarterback more or whatever it may be, and just these guys continuing to progress? And then the flip side, the offensive line. I think I had a lot of confidence in this offensive line for much of the season. That Wisconsin game was a weird one, and I thought it was sort of a one-game thing. Then Penn State. Now, Ryan Day made the point this week, and I think it's fair. Penn State has some really good defensive linemen, right? But and ultimately, it didn't. The pressure and stuff. Some credit to Julian Sayin on that. Didn't cause any major issues. But you'd like to see this line stand up a little bit better. Now, they're not going to have that kind of defensive line to go against, except in practice, these next few weeks. But I don't want to see some of these issues that we've seen in the last 2 games against less talented defensive linemen. I want to feel confident, especially going to Michigan, going into a Big Ten championship game, potentially, because that offensive line is founded again. It'll be interesting to see. Ryan Day wouldn't just name the guards. Well, we know it was Luke Montgomery, Tego Shabola, and Josh Padilla all got banged up. He wouldn't say who the 2 of the 3 were that were going to be back in practice and one that was going to be more day-to-day. So it'll be interesting to see when that availability report comes out on Saturday morning, who is available, if anyone's questionable on the offensive line. Because, knock on wood, the Buckeyes have done a really good job of staying healthy, and some of that is by design with the way they attack the offseason and getting their bodies right. But some of that also is a little bit lucky. But as Tim said, look at last year for evidence that they can overcome these things. You hope they don't have to, though. And I want to see this offensive line at full strength playing against these teams to kind of build that confidence back up after 2 suspect days. And it would be silly not to mention Max Clare going back to Purdue this week. I don't think the Buckeyes will do anything out of character to boost his game. I could be wrong. Maybe they run some stuff that's more Max Clare focused. Imagine if you're Purdue, you're going to try and stop that. But you have to worry about those other guys, right? But that's a guy that I think has come along really well, but hasn't had, sort of a breakout performance yet, or, really, left his mark. He came to Ohio State to not only develop as a full-time player or all-around player, but also, make an impact on a team that could win a national championship, right? And he has, don't get me wrong, but I'm curious if there's just more to Max Clare than we've seen at this point. And could he be an X factor in a game, a Michigan game, a Big Ten championship game, a college football playoff game, a game where maybe the other team just doesn't see this coming. All of a sudden, Max Clare has 8 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's the difference in the game. He has that ability, no doubt about it. And I think he has done well to become that more balanced all-around tight end. So I think that's something not necessarily I want to see, because if it is going to be one game, but I just want to see him continue to be a part of this offense and do these things that are just wait, if they need him, he's there. And so I think that could be big. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I realized with Tim coming on and us trying to get this set up, if you missed it right before we started recording this on Thursday afternoon, Ohio State got a commitment. Actually, they flipped Jay Timmons from Florida State, the cornerback. So I was scrambling to help Garrett get that stuff up. And so I forgot, no drink. I did not grab a drink before this. My apologies. But sometimes, you go to happy hour just to hang out, not to have the drink. So I do have some water here, my water bottle. So we'll cheers with that to end this. Headline on Saturday evening, Sunday morning. I think something simple along Buckeyes' role in Purdue. I've been at the crazy games at Purdue, specifically that 2018 game that Tim mentioned. I don't think we'll have one of those. I don't think there's an upset brewing in this one. Credit to Purdue for playing Michigan tough last week, but maybe I'll be eating my words. I don't think so. Hopefully you're reading on Sunday morning. Not that this is Buckeye related, but the Columbus Crew defeated FC Cincinnati and advanced in the playoffs. That's one I will be watching on our way home. But for the Buckeyes, this should be another comfortable win, as they all have been this week. I don't think the Buckeyes are going to take Purdue lightly here, as they have not done all season. So I think it'll be a comfortable win for the Buckeyes. Stay tuned on Friday. We'll have our predictions on the Bucknuts Expert Roundtable. Until then, we'll see you. I'll talk to you guys after the game on what we learned live with Dave Biddle. And enjoy the game on Saturday. Cheers.